I'm looking at the 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 fight that makes the most sense, and that's not Boots. Canelo is going to bring way more to my legacy, way more to my bank account. Because at the end of the day, when boxing is done with, what will we have?
Mm-hmm.
I want to have a legacy that's something that people talk about for the ages, and not only that, I want to have a bank account that will last for ages as well.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So you heard Terence Crawford right there. He just said it doesn't make sense to fight Jaron Ennis. It makes much more sense to fight against Canelo Alvarez. Let me just start by saying this. If you guys have been paying attention and been following Terence Crawford's career, he has always been very consistent with fighting for legacy. When Terence Crawford fought Errol Spence, it was the biggest fight in the entire sport of boxing. Both Terence Crawford and Errol Spence were considered top 5, pound for pound, one of the best fighters in the world. It was truly the closest thing to a modern day Sugar Ray Leonard versus Tommy the Hitman Hearns. Terence Crawford had already mapped out what he wanted to do before he even fought Errol Spence. He had already said he's going to beat Errol Spence, and then he's going to move up to 154 and become a 3-division undisputed champion. Crawford said he wanted Errol Spence, and then he wanted to move up to 154 and beat Jermell Charlo. Now Jermell Charlo, he lost to Canelo Alvarez, and pretty much all the belts at 154 have been split up. So Terence Crawford is now going after the champions at 154. He's no longer interested in Jermell Charlo because he just came off of a loss. There's no doubt about it. Terence Crawford fighting against Canelo Alvarez makes way more sense than him fighting against Jaron Ennis. Every single old media outlet, they have Canelo Alvarez as pound for pound one of the best fighters in the world. None of them have Jaron Ennis as pound for pound one of the best fighters in the world. Not to mention the stuff that race fans and old media say about Canelo Alvarez by way of contrast. Hell, Fernando Vargas, he came out and said that Canelo is the greatest Mexican fighter of all time. And he's still the undisputed champion at 168. Terence Crawford is trying to do what no boxer has ever done in the history of the sport. So it's not even for debate that the Canelo Alvarez fight makes way more sense than a Jaron Ennis fight. For so many reasons. For starters, boxing is based on race, nationality, and pride. What that means is when Crawford fights against Jaron Ennis, the race fans, which are the majority of boxing fans, they're rooting against both fighters. For example, people like Mike Coppinger, Chris Mannix, they have come out publicly and defended Canelo Alvarez for avoiding David Benavidez because they're not real boxing journalists. They are race fans that are worried Canelo Alvarez is going to lose to David Benavidez. But none of them have said Terence Crawford, he doesn't have to fight Jaron Ennis because they look at it as the lesser of two evils. I have been consistently telling you guys from the beginning, the only time it makes sense for Team USA to fight against Team USA is when there's no one else left in that division. And it makes sense because it is the biggest fight or one of the biggest fights in the entire sport. If you guys notice, 4 or 5 years ago, I was never pushing for Terence Crawford to fight Errol Spence because there was a lot of unfinished business to do at welterweight for both fighters. I've always said they should fight against each other when they are the last two standing. Same thing with Gervonta Shakur Stevenson and Devin Haney. I was never pushing for them to fight against each other 4 or 5 years ago. I have always said it made more sense for Gervonta to fight Ryan Garcia first and Devin Haney to fight Teofimo Lopez first. And then once they're the last one standing, that's when the fight makes all the sense in the world. And remember, at this time, Shakur, he wasn't fighting at 135. He was at 130. Now you fast forward to present day, and you got Shakur and Gervonta, both champions at 135. It makes all the sense in the world for them to fight now. They're both considered pound for pound, one of the best fighters in the world. And right now, there's no bigger fight than that. What made Crawford versus Spence such a big fight is because Crawford had already became undisputed at 140, then moved up to 147 and dominated the division, knocking out every single opponent he faced at 147. And let me just give you guys a little bit more contrast when it comes to comparing Canelo's situation to him not fighting David Benavidez. For those of you guys who don't remember, David Benavidez, he was the champion at 168 before Canelo moved to 168. Unlike the Terence Crawford, Jaron Ennis situation. So David, he was the lineal champion. And it's so ironic because Canelo has been avoiding Benavidez for so long that race fans, they were trying to compare that situation to Terence Crawford versus Errol Spence, because this is before Spence and Crawford fought, right? They were saying, yeah, but you guys are not saying anything about Crawford versus Spence. I remember ESPN's commentator, the Mexican analyst Bernardo Usana, he said on the Spanish version of ESPN, if Terence Crawford and Errol Spence don't fight against each other, they are cowards. He used the word cobardes, apparently thinking that people weren't going to translate what he said and report it. He called them both cowards, and to this day, he hasn't called Canelo Alvarez a coward. Meanwhile, Terence Crawford, he continues to challenge himself. He continues to make history. There is no guarantee that he's going to beat Israel Madrimov, because this is Terence Crawford's 4th weight class. When you keep moving up in weight, even if you're better than your opponent, you just really never know how your body is going to adjust to the new weight class. So because Madrimov is naturally the bigger guy, he can make more mistakes in the fight and still possibly win. The point is, Terence Crawford, he's not trying to take easy fights, and he's not avoiding someone to take an easy guaranteed win. Crawford, he originally wanted to move up to 154 and fight Jermell Charlo when he was the undisputed champion before he lost to Canelo. Now that Charlo is no longer the undisputed champion, he's no longer considered pound for pound one of the best fighters in the world, Crawford, he directed his attention to the very dangerous Tim Tszyu. Then Tim Tszyu loses to Sebastian Fundora. Crawford, he goes after Fundora. Fundora doesn't want the smoke. Now he's going after Israel Madrimov. And actually, Tim Tszyu, he started talking like he didn't want the smoke either a week before the Fundora fight. All of a sudden, he switched up his energy and started saying that he would rather fight against Errol Spence, the guy that Terence Crawford knocked out. I really think Jaron Ennis, he should focus on becoming undisputed at 147, and Terence Crawford should focus on becoming undisputed at 154 or moving up to 168 and getting the Canelo Alvarez fight. So just like I told you guys that the Crawford versus Spence fight didn't make sense 5 years ago, Crawford versus Boots, it doesn't make any sense, or not too much sense right now, unless, once again, there is absolutely no one for Crawford to fight. There are no other challenges, and there's no other challenges for Jaron Ennis, and that's not the case right now. I've already explained to you guys why Canelo versus David Benavidez makes sense, but there's more reasons why that fight makes all the sense in the world, because Canelo has 2 losses on his record that he never avenged. So if Canelo is not going to fight Bivol in a rematch, and he didn't fight Floyd Mayweather in a rematch, so outside of Canelo fighting against Terence Crawford, David Benavidez is the only fight that makes sense for him. And this is something else we can say for a fact. We all know that if Terence Crawford was moving up to, let's say, 154 and David Benavidez was there, we know that Terence Crawford would be aggressively going after David Benavidez. Not to mention, David's style is tailor-made for Terence Crawford if they were close to the same weight, like Canelo Alvarez is. With that being said, I'm going to wrap this video up. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one. Let me tell you guys about Issa Israel Law Firm. It is a full-service legal practice based in Denver, Colorado, an emerging hub for combat sports and high-altitude training. If you're a fighter inside or outside of the ring and you need a law firm you can trust to fight for you, visit thefighterfirm.com or email help@iilawfirm.com. Legal representation is usually limited to plaintiffs or defendants in Colorado, but iFirm can help anyone in the world with trademarking their business name, logos, and U.S. immigration issues. This brother has been my attorney for a while and helped guide me through all kinds of business and civil issues, so make sure you guys go to thefighterfirm.com. All right, now check this out, guys. If you're looking to repair eczema scars, burns and bruises, dark spots and blemishes, the fever blisters, diabetic ulcers, this right here is the perfect product for you guys. It's called LO Deki Face and Body Oil. Athletes and top-ranking boxers, they're also using it after training to reduce swelling, inflammation, and to ease the pain. So get yours today. Go to lodeki.com, like them on Facebook, and follow them on Instagram.